Aloha everyone, and welcome to VOSR International, the voice of shortwave radio. I'm your host, Wavecrest Guy. This broadcast is being transmitted through WRMI, Radio Miami International, in Okeechobee, Florida, on 9455 kilohertz. We'll start out this broadcast with some announcements. First off, this is the first broadcast of our new every other week schedule. So there will only be one rebroadcast, and then they'll be followed by a new broadcast. With that, in the past, I've been posting the original files to the broadcasts on my VOSRinternational.com page and over on YouTube on my channel at Wavecrest Guy. And I've been waiting a while before I posted those. Now I'm going to go ahead and post them sooner. We'll have more shows, and it's going to build up a little bit quicker. And there'll probably be some times where people can't catch the original broadcast or even the one rebroadcast. Conditions or just life gets in the way. So you'll be able to go over there and catch those on VOSRinternational.com. And you'll be able to get them right away. As soon as the rebroadcast is complete, I'm going to go ahead and post those over there. The next part here is on the guest segments. We've had pretty good response, people getting back with me on wanting to do a guest segment, and you'll hear that today. We've got a couple guests, and we actually have our first returning guest, Ancient Grass 5121, will also have a segment on today. In thinking about the guest segments, there are a couple specific ones that I'm kind of looking for. I was thinking about having a segment about ham or amateur radio, and it's a part of shortwave. I don't want to turn this into a ham or amateur radio program, but we can definitely have a segment on that once in a while. And if there's somebody out there that has some good experience with it and can come up with ideas for segments, get a hold of me. I'd be happy to try to get them on the air. So send me an email at VOSRINT@yahoo.com. That's VOSRINT@yahoo.com. But if there's some Elmers out there who want to get involved, it's really easy to make a segment. It doesn't take a lot of time. There's a little bit of programming that I have to do to fit them into the show. So when you're producing the show, it's a little bit different than just doing a guest segment. So it's a little easier, and it doesn't take a lot of time. We can talk about topics, and there's a ton of topics that can be gone over. The second one I'm looking forward to is somebody with some tech experience. Who might have do some repairs on radios or do some troubleshooting, or just making some projects that help their shortwave, either building antennas or just other projects that have helped. Making simple repairs on the radios, and you could talk about which radios have certain issues and that type of thing. So if anybody has that type of experience, again, give me an email at VOSRINT@yahoo.com. In the subject line, put in tech segments, or if you're interested in the ham portion of it, put in ham or amateur radio segment, and we can go ahead and iron out how we want to do a segment, and we can get that moving and add those in. I'll add these in the same that I do with the programming segments, the radio segments, that type of thing, the equipment segments, guest segments. I'll just fold those in to broadcasts, so it doesn't have to be a big structure to it. So it won't take up a lot of your time. But go ahead and share that knowledge and get a hold of me so we can get that out and get it across the airwaves. And now on to the show. The first segment is going to be a guest segment. It's actually going to be two. This is kind of unique because we have two brothers that want to share their story about shortwave radio and how they got involved with it and how it evolved. And they are twins. So the first segment here is going to be Gerald, and followed by Gary. And I will do a brief introduction for Gary when we get to his segment. So here is Gerald.
Hello. Just want to Thank you for having me as a guest on the Voice of the Shortwave Radio International program. It's an honor and my pleasure being here. My name is Gerald Redor, and I live in Houston, Texas, and soon to be retired engineer, retiring at the end of August 2025, and looking forward to it. Looking to get more involved in the shortwave radio and I guess other interests that I have. So I recently started a YouTube channel, so you can check that out if you're interested. It's called Houston SWL, Houston capital S, capital W, capital L. We'll have a number of videos there now, but I do radio comparisons, videos of just kind of tooling around the shortwave bands on some shortwave and medium wave stations and other things coming down the pike. So check that out, Houston SWL. So thinking back, I had to go check my old logbook that I had when I started listening to shortwave to determine when I actually started. So I guess I went and looked. Surprisingly, I still have the logbook, and it was back in November 1977 was my first log entry. So that would have made me 15 years old. So some of the entries in there are radio RAE from Argentina, Radio RSA from Republic of South Africa, Radio Switzerland, Nigeria, Radio Peking. Interesting, I know they've changed their name over the years. Started off as Radio Peking, then Radio Beijing, and then China Radio International is the current name. Radio Clarin, I believe that was from the Dominican Republic. Radio Moscow, Radio Havana, Cuba. They've been on shortwave for a long time, but recently seem to have a bunch of transmitter issues. Radio Cairo, Radio Budapest, Radio Tahiti, and the list would just kind of go on and on. So it's kind of interesting how I got involved in shortwave radio. I guess I had a classmate at the time, was over at his house, and he had this really cool looking radio sitting on his desk, nothing like I had ever seen before. I was just familiar with AM, FM radios, and this had some push buttons and a whole bunch of dials on it, and I asked him, hey, what kind of radio is that? And he said, yeah, it's like a shortwave multi-band radio. So knew nothing about that at the time, but I just kind of thought it was cool, and then mentioning that to my parents, and then eventually they bought my twin brother and I a shortwave radio, and so that kind of kicked off our foray into the exciting world of shortwave radio listening. So my twin brother, he's a retired engineer also. He retired a number of years ago. He lives up in Huntsville, Texas, about an hour and 15-minute drive from here. So I'm going to do a series of videos with him. He recently got his ham radio license maybe a year and a half ago, so we're going to talk about ham radio, shortwave radio, QSLs, look at some of his antennas, radios, do some radio comparisons, and talk a little about what his other interests are outside of ham radio and shortwave listening. So my first radio was a GE Model 4970 10-band radio. It was all analog. There's no frequency readout, so you couldn't really determine exactly what frequency you were listening to. You had to go view some other sources to try to figure that out. But I did log a lot of stations with that radio. But back then when I started in 77, 78, the shortwave bands were a whole lot different. You could definitely hear a lot more stations than you can now, but that GE multi-band radio had an AM broadcast band on it, CB, UHF, shortwave. There were 2 shortwave channels on it. Let's see here. There was 2 public service bands, FM band, aircraft, and a weather band. So it was like I didn't know what to do with myself as a young teenager with all of these features and what to listen to. So went back and checked my logbook. So I listened pretty regularly from 1977 to 1981. Was sporadic off and on from there, and then from 87 to 88 I listened pretty regularly again. Log more stations, got more QSL cards, and it was kind of off and on from 1988 until maybe about 2 years ago when I started getting back into the hobby. So I've had a number of radios over the years. First was that GE 10-band radio. Eventually had gotten a Panasonic RF2600, which was a really neat radio with this blue LCD frequency readout. And I guess that radio actually had some filters on it. The GE didn't have anything like that, so having the high, wide, narrow filters did make a difference in listening to shortwave. And I had a number of Radio Shack radios because that was the in place to go back in the day to get any info on shortwave radio. They sold shortwave radio books, antennas. So I had a Radio Shack DX360 in the past, a DX397, DX390. I had a Grundig S350, but that wasn't that great of a shortwave radio. I had a Kaito 1101 as one of the more recent radios. I had a Sony ICF Pro 80. That was a cool radio because it was made sort of like a handheld walkie-talkie type radio. But it started having some frequency drift issues. I sent that off to get repaired, and then life sort of got in the way and ended up selling that. But I kind of really wish I had that. So you might want to go Google Sony ICF Pro 80 just to see what that looks like. I had a Sanyo MB60A. I believe I bought that in the duty-free shop in the airport in Tokyo. I don't remember a whole lot about that radio, actually, though. And then one of the major radios, at least to me, that I bought was the Grundig Satellite 800, because that was the best shortwave communications radio I ever bought. As soon as they announced that was coming out, I jumped on that and was probably there the first day at the store here that sold that radio, and got one, brought it back home, and was just kind of enthralled with using that to listen on shortwave radio. Did end up selling that, over the years in the past. And so some of my the current radios that I have is a Grundig Satellite 750. That's my main radio. That's a really good radio. I really like that, especially with an external antenna. The sensitivity seems good. Another thing I really like about that radio, it has an external ferrite rod or bar on the top of the radio that you can turn if you're going to do some medium wave AM, listening. So that makes it a whole lot easier than having to try to, turn the radio using the internal ferrite bar. And also bought a Texan PL880 maybe about 2 years ago, so that's my second radio. And then I recently bought a Texan PL368, the really small handheld radio. I'm kind of learning about some of the features on that. So I do have a video on my YouTube channel about my humble Radio Shack and I guess the external long wire antenna that I'm using. So you can check that out if you like. But that external antenna, if you go on the DX Engineering webpage, it's called the PAR InFeds EF-SWL. They say it's an InFed half-wave antenna, receive only 0 to 30 megahertz. It's 45 feet in length. There's a 9-to-1 balun where you connect some coax, and that's what I run from the balun into the shack. Connects up to a coax switch that then runs to a connector on the Grundig 750. And so I guess in that video that I mentioned about my shack and antenna, I actually added probably an extra 80 feet of just speaker wire onto that. So I have like 120, 125 feet of external antenna running around my backyard on the top of the fence, but you can see that in the video. So that seems to work really well. I don't want to get too involved, elaborate in these antenna schemes. So that antenna has been working well, so I'm happy with it. So that's the antenna that I used, and just consider myself really fortunate to have gotten involved in the shortwave hobby. I would say back in its heyday, because you could turn on the shortwave radio and pretty much hear a station at any time. Maybe that's not always the case, but there's definitely a lot more stations broadcasting on shortwave back then than there are now. And so I was able to hear a lot of countries and stations, and I think I heard over 120 countries. I don't know the exact number now, verified over 66. Heard over 188 stations. That's probably well over 200 now, and verified over 77 stations. Have over 90 QSL cards, like about 20 pennants and other stuff that we'd get from radio stations when we would write to them. So that was another intriguing part of the hobby. Actually writing letters by hand or typing them up, mailing them off to the shortwave radio stations with your reception report asking for a QSL, and a lot of times they would send you the QSL card, but then a lot of other memorabilia from the station that you can collect. So it was a real neat and exciting time as a young teenager and an older adult, you know. So just waiting for the mailman to come to see what might come in the mail that day. And so, yeah, what I really liked about shortwave listening was the music. You know, I still can remember Radio Tahiti, listening to that in the evening, lying on my bed, you know, just kind of dreaming about what it'd be like to be there. And it actually come in fairly clear in the evenings here in Houston. You know, there's a number of cultural programs you can listen to. They had DX programs, news, of course, and maybe another kind of interesting thing were language lessons. You know, I've studied Japanese off and on for a while, definitely not fluent, but Radio Japan had a program called Let's Learn Japanese. You can write to them. They'd send you a little booklet to learn beginner Japanese and follow along with the radio broadcast. You know, you can hear some sports on the shortwave. I heard some soccer matches, rugby, and on Radio Japan, sometimes they broadcast the sumo bashos that are taking place over there. I've learned a whole lot about geography being a shortwave radio listener. You can hear pirate stations, number stations, time stations, utility stations. And so I guess sometimes I just want to be like a general shortwave listener, want to listen to fairly strong signal for some music or anything that I'm interested in. And other times, you know, I turn into a DXer. I want to hear that hard to hear station or country, try to pull the signal out of the weeds. And, you know, that part of it was just kind of a challenge because you turned on the radio and never really knew what you might end up hearing. So it was exciting. So I'll also say I have another channel on YouTube. It's a music channel called World Ukulele or Ukulele. I've been playing the ukulele for a number of years. I started off in college, going to a pawn shop, buying a guitar, getting that. You know, I can strum chords on the guitar, but I'm not a great guitar player. But I started playing the ukulele after a friend mentioned that. Really kind of got involved in that for a number of years and started leading a ukulele group. We've since disbanded. But, I started with this, the concert size. It's the second biggest size of the ukulele. Moved up to the tenor size, then the baritone, which is tuned similarly to a guitar. And then now I basically play a tenor guitar, which is just kind of a big baritone ukulele. So that keeps me busy. So if you're interested in music stuff, check out World Ukulele channel on YouTube. So again, I just want to say a big mahalo to the Voice of Shortwave Radio International program for letting me be a guest on here, and hopefully I can come back in the future. So thank you very much, and aloha.
Big mahalo for that segment, Gerald. Now this next segment is going to sound eerily similar. It's uncanny how their voices sound the same. But we'll move on to his brother Gary's segment.
Hello, and hey, thanks for inviting me on the show. I'm glad to be here, glad for the opportunity. My name is Gary Redor. I live in Huntsville, Texas, which is a small city about 1 hour north of Houston. I'm a retired civil engineer. I worked for the city of Houston for 30 years, and about 10 years ago, I was lucky enough to be able to retire. So I'm enjoying my retirement years and wanted to talk to you a little bit about my history, background, and love of shortwave radio listening. So I guess my story begins around 1977. I have a twin brother, Gerald Redor, and I think he's going to be on the show as well, and our experiences overlap a lot. But back in 1977, I was 15 years old. We got a multi-band radio. Gerald seems to remember how we acquired that. I don't remember, but I remember it was new to us. I think our parents got it for us. And it had all these bands on it. Besides AM and FM, it had something called shortwave radio, which we didn't really know anything about, but started to listen to that. As impressionable teenagers, we started hearing stations coming in our little bedroom in Houston, Texas, from all over the world. And boy, we were just fascinated and enthralled, and we were really hooked. I love learning about new cultures and customs and that type of thing, and we ate this up like candy. It was a cheap analog radio. I don't even remember the brand name. It wasn't a major brand, and you had to turn the tuning dial, no digital readout. So it's a little tough to know what exact frequency you were tuning into or listening to, but we didn't know any better. We were hearing stations coming in from China and Russia and Radio Tahiti in the South Pacific, the Netherlands, almost any continent and country you can think of. And I shared a room with my brother, and we had twin beds in there, and we would just stay up sometimes through the wee hours of the night. I remember getting up at a certain time in the middle of the night to try to hear this rare station coming in over the airwaves, and eventually we got a second radio, a GE, and my brother would listen to that, and I'd listen to this first radio that we had, and we would kind of compete to see, hey, who could hear what and how many stations we could hear, how many countries we could hear. We became members of shortwave NASWA, shortwave kind of interest group, and received this monthly like newsletter or a little magazine, and it would give us information about stations. And then we ended up writing to stations a lot to get QSL cards, and that became a real treat. And they would also send things like pennants, stickers, magazines, and I remember my favorite station was Radio Nederland, because on every Sunday they had a program called The Happy Station, and I really loved listening to that. And also learned a lot about electronics, and we would build little projects. We'd go to Radio Shack, buy the components, and put them together, and it was just a really fun time. It just brings back fond memories. But then this was, I guess, during junior high school, then when we in high school. But when we ended up going to college, and like in 1980, we didn't really have time to devote to shortwave radio listening, because the engineering program was quite demanding. So I stopped listening to shortwave. And then I went to college, got my degree in 1985, began to work for the city of Houston in the Public Works Department. But I think around the late 1990s, I got back into shortwave radio listening for a couple years. I remember, I think back in the 2000, or in the year 2000, Grundig came out with the Satellite 800. I think my brother went out and he bought one, and he called me up, told me about it. I remember, I think that same day, I went down to the Sharper Image in the Galleria Mall and got mine, because it was just a hot commodity, and really loved using that radio. When we were listening to shortwave, I'll say this, you just had a long wire antenna strung out in the backyard, and worked wonders for us. But over the years, I had quite a few radios. I mentioned that Grundig Satellite 800. I had a Radio Shack DX375 and a Radio Shack DX397. Yeah, back then, Radio Shack was the bomb, the place to go. You could find books and stuff on shortwave radio, and shortwave radios in it also. I remember I wasn't really too impressed with their radios. They were okay, but nothing spectacular. I had a Panasonic RB50, and then I eventually got a real nice radio, which is a Sony 2010. At the time, it was kind of one of the best rated radios around, and I used that for a while. But to be honest, then something about it I just never really took to totally, and I ended up selling that. And I also bought a Sony ICF 7600G, which was rated at the time one of the best portable shortwave radios around. And I really liked that radio, and I still have that today. That's the only radio that I had up until about a year and a half ago. And then about a year and a half ago, I got into ham radio and got my entry-level license and bought a Yaesu FT710. And I put up in the backyard a infit half-wave antenna. And then a friend told me about a delta loop, and I put up a delta loop as well. And then I realized, hey, this Yaesu FT710 transceiver can also get shortwave radio. And I didn't really realize that, surprisingly enough. And I started listening to shortwave about a year and a half ago. And my brother Gerald got into that as well. Then he got a Texan PL 880, and I wanted something a little more portable. My Sony 7600G had some power problems. I couldn't use the battery compartment because I left some batteries in there for years, and they got corroded and damaged the battery compartment. So I can only use it plugged in with the power supply, but I wanted something portable I could take around with batteries. So I got the Texan PL 880, great radio. And then recently, about a couple weeks ago, I got the Chodosin DX286, and I love that radio. It's very small and compact, and gets very good reception, just as good as the Texan PL 880. It's supposed to be great for FM radio DXing, which I've never done, but I'm going to try that. So now I just hook up my shortwave radios to the delta loop, because I find that antenna is a lot quieter than the infit half wave, and I use that, and I can pull in quite a few stations, as many stations that are on the air waves now. Say things have changed a lot over the years. Back when I was a kid, it was just stations everywhere. Now they're a lot more limited, but you can still hear a lot of stuff. And like I said, I got my ham radio license in November 2023. My call sign is KJ5DAN. I really love ham radio as well. As an aside, I remember when I was as a teenager, I used to hear the ham radio operators all the time on SSB or single sideband. Thought of getting a ham radio license, but back then you had to learn Morse code, and I didn't want to do that. That turned me off. And maybe thankfully nowadays, Morse code is not a requirement to get a ham radio license, so that convinced me to get it. And I've gotten awards with that, the Worked All States and the Century Award, where I've been able to have confirmations, QSOs, with other hams in 100 countries around the world. So I've really joined the ham radio. But like I said, got back into shortwave and loving that as well. And recently, my twin brother Gerald started a YouTube channel called Houston SWL, which is Houston Shortwave Listening, but it's Houston SWL, a YouTube channel. So I've been collaborating with him on making videos we can put up on that. And I also like to listen to AM on the shortwave radio, and plan on, checking out the FM DX, because I got the Chodosin DX286. So that's kind of my history, my story of shortwave radio. And I think it's a hobby that a lot of people don't know much about, but has a lot to offer. And I'm finding when I'm talking with a lot of ham radio operators, a lot of them listen to shortwave radio, say back in the day, when they were in their teens, and they have fond memories about it as well. And that's what I liked about shortwave, collecting QSL cards. And I find interesting and fascinating with ham radio because I can collect QSL cards from other hams that I've spoken to all over the world. And I have quite a collection now of QSL cards from my ham radio contacts. Sadly enough, I guess the QSL cards that I got when I was a teenager, I don't have those anymore, but Gerald has his, so I can maybe live vicariously through him with his collection. So hopefully, I'm hoping to get some more QSL cards and kind of collection going now from the much more limited stations that are out there. So really excited about things that are going on in the shortwave area of shortwave. And so again, thanks for having me on the program and sharing my story. Thank you.
So I want to give a big mahalo to both Gerald and Gary for stepping up and doing that guest segment. It was really nice that at first I got an email from Gerald wanting to do a segment, and he's been teaming up with his brother and doing some videos now that they've gotten back into shortwave. And a couple days later I got an email from Gary who wanted to do a segment, so I thought it was perfect to put them together. And you can go ahead and go to YouTube and check out their content on Houston SWL. That's Houston with a capital H and SWL as capital. They're putting out some shortwave content, and they'll be putting out more videos here in the future. So if you have any questions or let me know what you thought about that guest segment, send some emails over to VOSRINT@yahoo.com. That's VOSRINT@yahoo.com. Or you can go over to our website at VOSRInternational.com, and you can click the mail icon and send the correspondence that way. Let us know what you thought. And now on to our next segment. This is going to be another guest segment, and it's going to be the first returning guest that we've had here at VOSR, and it's Ancient Grass 5121. And he's going to go over, I go over programming during programming segments. He's going to go over some other facets of interesting things you can listen to on shortwave radio. Take it away, Ancient Grass.
Hello, I'm honored to be back on the program. This is Ancient_Grass_5121. I am on YouTube and on Reddit as well. I am a shortwave listener and radio enthusiast. Now, tonight, I'd like to talk about the common digital modes that you might hear on shortwave. Now, a lot of people, when they get into shortwave, myself included, they hear certain digital modes and they don't quite know what they are. They don't know what they're listening to. And tonight, I'm hoping to kind of have you listen to some of those modes and tell you a little bit about them. So there are a ton of digital modes, and we don't have time to cover them all in this segment or on this program, but I will do my best to cover the ones that I've heard quite often and that you might find very interesting. So let's get started. So the one I like to talk about is SSTV, or slow scan television. Now this is pretty interesting because you can actually decode slow scan TV over radio, and this is kind of common on the HF bands, on the ham bands, and on this station, for example, on WRMI. There's a program that I've heard that has what I've heard to be SSTV, and people can decode this SSTV and view an image that is transmitted over the air. The program that I use for decoding slow scan television, and the only one that I know of, is called MMSSTV. It's developed by a Canadian amateur radio operator, and it's a very good program. It's pretty much, you could call it plug and play, to where it automatically decodes whenever it hears slow scan television. You can use your computer's microphone, or you can use your line-in jack on your computer, and it will decode it from your radio. The way I have mine connected, and the way I found that it works the best, is to run the line-out cable from my radio to the line in jack on my computer using a 3.5 millimeter jack. But you can use your microphone, but I've never tried it that way, and I like to talk to myself a lot, so honestly I'd rather not have any interference from noises in the room when I'm trying to decode slow scan television. And you could also use your headphone jack on your radio, but the problem is you have to have your volume adjusted so it's not too low and it's not too high. Same thing with your microphone as well. It's very easy to use, and you don't need to be an amateur radio operator to use it. Obviously, if you're going to transmit SSTV, you should have an amateur radio license, but to just decode it, you don't need a license. It will ask for your call sign, but you could just hit the X or cancel out of it, because all you're doing is decoding for the average shortwave listener. The nice thing is, it's not only just for amateur radio operators. There's that program on WRMI that I've heard. And also, I've came across some pirates that use SSTV, and they transmit an image over the air, which I thought was pretty cool. I have a bunch of those saved onto my computer. The nice thing about the program is it lets you save whatever image, it lets you copy it, and then paste it below. There's like a spot for your images. And you can also just paste the image in the Paint, and you can convert it to a PNG file and save it on your computer, or post it on the internet, whatever you want to do. But yeah, that's SSTV. And the program is free to use, and you don't need to be a ham radio operator to decode these images. Speaking of decoding, the next program I'd like to talk about is FL Digi. Now, FL Digi is not so plug and play. You do have to set this up to take the audio from your PC's sound card. It's not that hard to do, but it's not plug and play, so you can't just start decoding right away. You have to go into the settings and select it to decode from your line in on the computer, but it works very similarly to SSTV. Now, the reason why I downloaded SSTV is because FL Digi doesn't decode slow scan television, so you do need that previous program I discussed to decode SSTV. However, FL Digi is great for decoding CW, Morse code, weather facts, which I do a lot of, and RTTY, Navtex, and other signals that I haven't tried yet, but they do exist, and FL Digi will decode it. They have a whole bunch of different digital modes that it supports, and it's a free program, and I definitely recommend that everybody download this and check it out for themselves. It's free, you don't have anything to lose, and you won't get any viruses. Trust me, I'm very conscious about that. But yeah, I use FL Digi a lot, and before we go any further, I would like to talk about some of the sounds that you're going to hear. And I'd like to play some of the sounds that you're going to hear over the radio, so that way you know what it is when you go to decode it, and you have an idea of, oh, that's what that sound is. Because I'm sure you've had that thought before, where you came across something that sounds like aliens, and it's just some normal thing. So let's get into that. So the first one I'd like to talk about is called FT8. It's very common, and I see a lot of questions about it, like, what's this sound that I'm hearing? And I'm going to play you a clip of it so you know what FT8 sounds like. A quick description of what FT8 is. It's a ham radio digital mode that works well in areas with a lot of noise, and it's great for weak signal reception. And basically, the amateur radio operators will transmit their call sign and very limited information. It's not a very information heavy mode, but it does work well with a weak signal and in areas with a lot of noise. So let's listen to what that sounds like. Okay, moving along, let's check out the sound of the HFDL, which is used to track airplanes. And this is a recording that I made myself, and a lot of people are into tracking airplanes, so let's check this out. So there you have it, that's the HFDL. Now let's move on to another one which is very commonly heard. This is the HF Stock Exchange. Now a little information on this one. The radio signals travel at the speed of light. So what the HF Stock Exchange does is it transmits data for the stock exchange over the radio, because it's a lot faster than using satellite, and the internet. The only problem with this is they really want to take over the entire HF space from broadcasters and amateur radio operators, so it's not a good thing, and it's not really useful information to anyone unless you're a trader. So that's a trader with a D, not a T. So let's listen to what that sounds like. This is a recording that I made myself. So you can see that's really loud and annoying, and it takes up about 30 kilohertz of space. So it's definitely a wide signal and very annoying to pick up. I guess it's not annoying if you're a trader, but you're not a trader, it's very annoying. Now we're going to move on to ALE, or ALE. This is a common digital mode that I pick up. I'm pretty sure it's used by the military, which a lot of these digital modes are. So let's listen to what that sounds like. It's basically just a short burst of data that you can pick up, and I'm sure you've heard this. That's what it is. It's called ALE, and pretty sure you can decode this through FLDigi, but being the US military, it might be encrypted. Now, speaking of the US military, let's talk about the other commonly heard digital mode that you probably won't be able to decode. It's called STANAG. Now, STANAG is a digital mode used by the US military, and you hear it sounds like a diesel engine running. So let's hear what that sounds like. And that's STANAG. Now, let's talk about DRM. DRM is a digital mode used by broadcasters, and DRM is basically digital radio, but over shortwave. Now, if you don't have a DRM decoder, you won't be able to listen to the broadcast. It's not a very common mode because, you know, with shortwave, there's a lot of fading and a lot of things like that, so it's not good for digital because you have a lot of dropped packets. But let's listen to what it sounds like raw, and here it is. Kind of just sounds like static, but trust me, it's definitely different than what you'll hear beside it. It's about 10 kilohertz wide. So that's that. Now the next one I'd like to talk about is called CODAR. CODAR is used for measuring waves, wave speeds, and such like that. This is what it sounds like. Now, as you can see, it kind of has that sweeping motion. That's the sound of the waves, and you pick this up a lot on shortwave. So if you ever heard that and was wondering what kind of strange signal this is, it's very simple, very explainable. So now let's move on to the next one. The next digital mode that I would like to talk about is called Navtex. Now, Navtex it's common to hear, and it's something that you can decode using FLDigi. This is Navtex that I received on 517 kilohertz, so technically medium wave, long wave range, but this is what it sounds like. And this is my own recording from my YouTube channel. Alright, there you have it. That was using my Yaesu FT890 radio. The following signal that you're going to hear is called RTTY. Now, normally you cannot decode RTTY unless it's transmitted by an amateur radio operator. Most of the RTTY that I've come across on the HF bands are used by governments and by NATO, and they're not easily decodable. Even with FLDigi, it's all encrypted. I'll play what that sounds like so you can hear it. Here it is. Now, last but not least, let's talk about slow scan television again. This is what it sounds like. Ready? So as you can see, that's what it sounds like. Sounds like signals from outer space. This digital mode, or this version of SSTV, is called Scotty 1. There's a lot of different ones. I usually have SSTV set to auto detect which mode it's using. That's the way I found that works the best. Also, I wanted to swing back to the HFDL. There's a program that you can use to decode these HFDL packets. However, you'll have to pay for it. It's a paid program. It's not free like FL Digi and SSTV. So there's that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the segment. Hopefully I cleared up a few of the digital modes that you might hear on the shortwave bands. And if you found this enjoyable, please follow my YouTube channel, ancient_grass_5121, and Reddit, same username. And you can find me on the subreddit r/Grundig Shortwave Radio. And I really hope you enjoyed the segment. Now on to the rest of the program. I'd like to thank the host for having me on the program again. And goodbye and good night and 73s.
I'm sending a big mahalo there to Ancient Grass for that segment. It was really interesting and very informative. If you want to check out some more of his content, go over to YouTube. His channel is ancient_grass_5121. He's got quite a few videos he's putting out over there, and he's really gotten into shortwave again, big time. So go ahead and check him out. And let us know what you thought of that segment. Send us an email at VOSRINT@yahoo.com. That's VOSRINT@yahoo.com. If you got any questions on that segment, there's a lot of information on there that might bring up some questions. So if you got any questions, go ahead and send those in, and we'll have Ancient Grass back, and he can answer and help out where he can. Also, check out our website at VOSRInternational.com. There's going to be updates in there for these segments. There's going to be updates for both Gerald and Gary. We'll have some pictures on there where you can check stuff out, what they went over during their segment. And the same with Ancient Grass. I'll have an update section there that you can go over there and check out what he went over during his segment. And now over to the mailbag segment. This seems to be a popular segment for everyone. Make sure you keep the emails coming in with reception reports. Remember, if you're going to send in a reception report, please put on the frequency now that we have two frequencies. If you heard it on 94.55, please enter that. And then if you listened on 15.770 kilohertz, put that in the message too. We appreciate any reception reports, any correspondence. We love getting the email. It tells us who's listening out there. And if you let us know your location, we can go ahead and put you on the listeners map, and you can check that out over at VOSRInternational.com. So our first email was from Andrew from Yucaipa, California. And he said that he had pretty good reception on his PL330 with a homemade PVC antenna. We were also his first QSL, so that's pretty nice. Hopefully he'll get many more. Dan from Tulare, California, was fairly clear with some wavering, and he uses a Sangen 909X2 with a PK loop antenna, and he's looking forward to our next broadcast. Then over on Discord, Master Player 30 from the rebroadcast of 523, he reports a plus 25 on a local SDR Play RSP1A with an MLA 30 antenna. Guillermo from Indianapolis, he reported good reception with an 8-meter random wire antenna. Then over on VOSRInternational.com, Toxic Camper from Kelowna, British Columbia, on a Texan PL360 reported good reception. This next one was actually through the WRMI website. Armando out of Las Vegas, Nevada. He thanked us for our wonderful programming. He especially liked this segment on WWVH. So thank you very much for those kind words, Armando. Christopher from McLean, Virginia. He's back listening to shortwave after a 40-year break. That's a long time. So we want to welcome him back. He's listening with a Texan PL680 with a long wire antenna. Next is Brian from Athens, Georgia. Reception is loud and clear using his HF Plus Discovery with a 100-foot wire antenna array. Then from YouTube, Steve from Grants, New Mexico. He uses his ATS 20 Plus and a long wire, and he has a long wire array, and the signal was between 5.2 and 5.4. That is a 60-foot long wire array that he uses. Then on to from the website, Steve. No location was given, but he uses a Grundig FR200 and one AA battery on a 35-foot long wire. He had better reception than on his K9 VDK SDR that he was using from Illinois. Next is Kyle from Austin, Texas. He really enjoyed the broadcast, the guest, Ancient Grass 5121. The signal was 30 over S9 using an SDR Play RSP1 with a DX Engineering RF Pro Active Receive Magnaloop A+ at 15 feet. There's a lot of people using those SDR Plays RSP1s, those Raspberry Pis. A lot of people using those. And he also has a FTX 3000 with an 80-meter doublet at 40 feet. So he was able to get good reception. He also gave a inquiry about being a guest. So Kyle, come on, answer back, and we'll talk over possibly having a guest segment here on VOSR. Next is Eric from Red Deer, Alberta. And he was using a Grundig 750 with an MLA 30 Plus. Reports a great signal. He had a SINPO of 54444. And he said it was an interesting show and very informative. Thank you for the kind words. And that was actually from a Facebook post. Next we have Harold via email from East Hampton, Massachusetts. He lists a SINPO of all fives, 55555, and this one was on frequency 15770 kilohertz. So this is our first listener there listing that show. That actually went out early. The 15770 kilohertz was actually supposed to start with the June 7th broadcast. It actually went a couple weeks earlier on a rebroadcast. So this one was a little bit before that. He said it was a great show, and he misses these types of programs on shortwave. He's been SWLing since 1967. And he used to listen to DX Party Line with a John Beck via HCJB, as well as Jonathan Marks on Media Network via Radio Netherlands. So he's definitely heard quite a bit of shows on shortwave, and hopefully he can get back into it now and start listening to a lot of the new content that's out there. Through YouTube, Trustin P9504 on the west coast of Newfoundland reports good reception using an MLA 30 antenna. He really enjoyed the program, and he's looking forward to tuning in again. Thank you so much for those kind words. Through YouTube, GLK001 did not give a location, but he reported good reception, and he was glad to hear some different programming coming off of shortwave nowadays. Again, I want to thank everyone for all the kind words about the show. Next, we have Frankie O's 23 from Mazatlan, Mexico. He'll be catching the show tonight. Aloha, Frankie O's 23, if you're listening out there tonight. From Discord, we have Moopsy from Kansas. Said the signal is loud and clear, 40 to 45 SNR. Kainan from Wichita, it said the signal is at least plus 20. And then John from Coyote Ranch Concho, Arizona. He has an SINPO of 55544. That is excellent. And on his Texan PL360 with the built-in whip antenna. Next we have Victor from Toronto, Canada. He's listening on an XH Data D109. Wishing all is well. And right back at you there, Victor. J. Pat from Bowling Green, Kentucky, home of the Corvette. He is listening on an Icon 7300. He just found the show and loves it. Thank you very much for the kind words there, J. Pat. Next, we have Justin from South Central Wisconsin, a regular listener. And he is listening on an RSP Duo with an MLA 30 plus antenna. And he's reporting an SINPO of 55344, plus 10 to plus 20 on the S meter. And Rob from San Diego, California is reporting S9, good reception. That's really good way out there to California. I do catch the program on 9455 out here in Hawaii, and I usually get it about an S7. And this next one was a really nice one. Turu from Hamamatsu City, Japan. He's listening via Kiwi SDR that is in Big Bend, Florida. And he doesn't understand English, but he's using a smartphone app. Maybe it's 3PO, I don't know, he didn't mention. But he's caught a few shows ago, and he thanks me for the all the effort. And hopefully he'll be catching the next show and be listening right now. So a big aloha to Toru from Japan. And then next we have Charles from Columbus, Ohio. He sent an email, and he also messaged on radioreference.com. Reports a great signal. He has a living room set up with an IC705 and an MLA 30 plus antenna. Next is regular listener Paul from St. Catharines, Canada, and he listens on a web SDR from Washington, D.C. And he said he always looks forward to the show and the new content for every show. It's his favorite shortwave program. Thank you so much for all the encouragement, Paul. I do want to thank Paul also because he actually sent in a design for an EQSL card, and I started using that with this last batch of correspondence that went out. So we have a newly designed card with the Hawaii theme going out. So if you sent out a reception report before, you can start collecting new EQSL cards. If anybody else has a design out there, go ahead and send them in to me, and I'll get them in a rotation. I'll use them for a few months if I end up getting a lot of them, and then people can start collecting them. One request is we just want to leave enough space on one of the sides or down in one of the corners where I can add the person's name, the date, and the frequency. So get those sent in. Send them in to VOSRINT@yahoo.com. That's VOSRINT@yahoo.com. Also, I need to thank Paul because he sent in an AI picture of the VOSR broadcast booth, and it's one of those Lego sets. So go ahead and check that out. I'm going to put it on our website at VOSR International.com. Go check that out over there. I'll have the picture up. It was really neat. It was kind of cool. And that concludes this broadcast of VOSR International, the voice of shortwave radio. We are broadcast on Saturdays at 0300 UTC on 9455 kilohertz on WRMI, Radio Miami International. Until the next show, a hui ho, everyone.